Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1837. This is FDH managing partner Rick Morris coming at you with one of our favorite FDH Lounge dignitaries. It is, of course, Sportsology proprietor / 11-time author Russ Cohen coming on, our FDH Lounge dignitary, to come on and talk 2025 Stanley Cup final preview. And this is something that veered away from what our predictions were prior to the playoffs here, Russ. And I'm a little bit rueful about my predictions here, that maybe there's some things I should have seen coming differently here. But it is a case where people have looked at the hockey playoffs this year as well as the basketball playoffs and said, I wonder if this is a year where the regular season quite matters as much, because you get to the playoffs and there were a lot of things, I think, in both sports that have been turned on their heads a bit.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I never did pick the Cup winner on this show and on others because I was feeling like not confident about anybody really. And then after like the Oilers got through a round, I started riding the Oilers because I was like, they've got a second life, and they did make a lot out of that. Florida, it was, mostly good for them, but it was also like the other teams that faced them weren't as good as they should have been. So That was their competition ended up being much easier than we probably all anticipated. So, yeah, I mean, in the end, you could say, hey, these teams deserve it, and they do.
Yeah, and in looking at this here, because both of these teams at various points in time coming into the playoffs, and again, I had picked Tampa Bay over Florida in the first round, and I picked Tampa Bay to go all the way. And I picked Edmonton to lose to the LA Kings. But it's a thing where in the first round, I'm looking at this here, and I'm going to bring up in a second our FDH.
Most everybody picked the LA Kings. But when Edmonton got past them, it was like, all right, that's a hurdle.
Seemed like it was their year. And like both teams, I think you looked at it, and it was a matter of not necessarily a huge Stanley Cup hangover with both of them. And certainly in the case of Florida, for the amount of time that they were without Matthew Tkachuk, it was more forgivable, I think, in their case. But
yeah, sure.
Both of them looked a little bit, for lack of a better term, wearier perhaps than they were this time last year coming into the playoffs. But I'm looking at something here, and I'm going to bring this up. And as far as our 2025 FDH NHL end of regular season breakdown, you can find this available on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com. And there's something that jumps out at me in particular here. I'm going to go through the numbers. Okay. But on the shooting percentage, Florida 28th for the season, Edmonton 24th. And I'm looking at this and that is a number that can be incredibly fluky, that can be prone to runs of just great hotness or coldness, as it were. And I remember, I don't remember the exact player, but there was somebody for Vegas in their expansion season, and I think he had like a 16.8% shot.
It was higher. It was William Karlsson. He was probably around 18, something crazy 18. Like that.
Yeah, like way above. And then it was like you knew he was never going to have a season quite like that ever again, and he hasn't. But it's a thing where I should have looked at those numbers, and I should have seen them for the flukes that they are, because I'm a huge regression to the mean kind of a guy. And in looking at this, if those numbers could be that crappy over 82 games, we should have seen the correction coming, or I'll say it's the editorial I'll say me. I should have seen it coming. And all these games in the playoffs where Florida has had these offensive explosions, it's kind of like, yeah, they were due for it after the regular season they had, and I just didn't see that before.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. Again, though, I mean, these are two teams with a lot of talented guys, and Edmonton's had to overcome things like the Ekholm injury, and now they're going to have to overcome Zach Hyman's injury. Connor Brown was starting to score. He's out. He might come back. I don't know. And so I think it's just the way this goes sometimes, It's like this is why we always say, hey, we're just going to make these predictions, and a lot of times we're not going to be right. Like, In one, I'm for Off the Post, I'm 9-5, and for Sirius XM, I have 8 wins. And so it's like I'm doing pretty good. I was undefeated last round, but I started off slow, and so I got smarter as it went on.
I have picked against Edmonton every round thus far. I've been wrong every round here, and
every round you're wrong. Yeah.
Every round I've been wrong. I was shocked at the way they dismantled Dallas. I was starting to think it was really Dallas's year. But
I
as we
wasn't
get into
shocked.
this,
I'll tell you a quick thing why.
yeah,
And
why?
I don't blame Jake Ottinger, but one of the points I brought up on Sirius was I looked him up lifetime against Dallas, and his save percentage wasn't very good, but he had barely a winning record. And I said it to a friend of mine, and he was like, "Yeah, well, what's recent?" I'm like, "Well, he lost to him last year too." And these are some of the reasons I'm going with Edmonton. Plus, Ottinger had faced the most shots in the playoffs, and he also was, to me, facing too many high danger chances. That defense just lets up too many high danger chances, and Edmonton's so good on the rush. And I was like, you know what? That's a bad combo for me.
Yeah, but also too, I mean, and this is one of these things where in terms of the regular season versus the playoffs and what does the regular season even really matter? I mean, the way that Edmonton is playing defensively right now, I mean, and Skinner's been a huge part of it in net. Let's not take anything away from him.
Sure.
But him and the defense as a whole, night and day, basically. So it's like, what are we to make of this? I mean, I know that Knoblauch is really excellent. I mean, he is quickly establishing himself as one of the top coaches in the league. And that as far as getting into the matchups and the ways to combat various systems here, but it's just really incredible that like what you see in the course of the regular season does not have any bearing to what you're going to see going into one of the rounds that Edmonton plays.
Yeah, remember, Knoblauch is Connor McDavid's original coach. Like, I went and saw a game that Erie played and went up to, Erie, and yeah, he was the guy. When he's with the Flyers, I thought he was pretty good at what he did. When he's with the Rangers, he was good, but I wasn't sure if that window was real when he kind of jumped in there as head coach temporarily. But yeah, he's a really good coach. I think Jake Wallman and John Klingberg were amazing pickups, and they've done great. And I have always been a fan of Jake Wallman since his college days. So those two things and just an overall commitment to team defense has been better than any team that they've faced so far.
Jake Wallman, I can think of a team that could use him on the blue line right about now.
Yeah, well, that team's in probably the last year of the Iser plan, and then they might have a new plan, but we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. That one didn't work out so well right there. But as far as the overall numbers go, and this is what kind of bears out the whole thesis about regular season versus playoffs here. So the statistical index that we have on our end of regular season breakdown, which again, you can find on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com. So in the overall numbers here, Florida ranked 10th and Edmonton ranked 12th. And that is a function of all of the individual numbers here.
Yeah.
Final power ranking from FDH, which is the only editorial judgment part of this. Everything else is hard statistics. We had Florida ranked 6th in our season-ending power rankings, Edmonton 11th. Whoops. On the SRS, that does correlate pretty closely to what the final numbers were, though. Florida 10th, Edmonton 11th. Power play percentage, Florida 12th, Edmonton 8th. Penalty kill percentage, Florida 10th, Edmonton 16th. In the Fenwick 4 percentage, for anybody that wonders out there if this statistic has a chance to really mean something, it sure as heck does this year. Florida 2nd and Edmonton 3rd.
Yeah.
So hats off to the advanced statistics here. The aforementioned shot percentage here, again, just breathtaking when you look at this. Florida 28th, Edmonton 24th. That should never happen. And that basically should have prefaced some kind of offensive explosion in the playoffs. But it didn't to me going in, sadly enough. Save percentage, Florida 14th and Edmonton 16th. Goals scored, Florida 15th, Edmonton 11th. Goals allowed, Florida 7th, Edmonton 15th. So there is little to nothing that would have jumped out at you in looking at these numbers, which again, we do this across all 4 major North American sports. And generally speaking, they are illustrative of things that should kind of jump out at you. I will say that the advanced statistics really liked more than did some of the pundits in the NBA, for example, Denver, who took Oklahoma City really to the limits, and also Minnesota, which made it to the conference finals against all predictions from a lot of folks there who were pessimistic based on the fact that they drew the Lakers in the first round. So
sure, and screw the Indiana Pacers. But anyhow, keep going.
Well, I have a Pacers comparison to make when we get a little bit later on here, but I will just say, in looking at this here, unless you're looking at it as I am with I should have caught that lens of Florida and Edmonton with the absolutely crappy regular season shooting percentage numbers that I should have known that's going to start cutting the other way. There's really nothing when you look at these numbers here that would have told you, oh yeah, these are going to be the two teams playing in the Stanley Cup final for the second straight year.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But if you still look at team personnel, like I feel like you're that guy. If you go into White Castle at 3:00 in the afternoon and you're like, it tasted better at 1 a.m. I can't figure out why. Then you're that guy who made these selections. Like, I'm sorry, Rick.
Okay. Yeah, and that there may be a little bit of comparison to that. I was never a White Castle guy, by the way.
Well, I was when it's like a hard night of drinking and you gotta like get something to eat before you go home. White Castle was the perfect place.
But it's a bad place for a guy that hates onions as much as this guy. So,
oh, that's true. Yeah, onions are everywhere there. Yeah,
they are everywhere. So even pre-celiac disease diagnosis, I was never a White Castle guy, and certainly couldn't be now. But it is one of these things where, again, yes, I mean these are two rosters, and again, in a lot of ways, even more star-studded than they were a year ago. I mean, Brad Marchand is not the player that he was a couple of years ago, but my goodness, when you add him to that Florida, line up front there, yeah, I mean, obviously, when you Seth Jones, and we could go on and on about what these teams have done to kind of shore themselves.
I mean, they've done great pickups. I mean, both of them, both GMs have done a great job. I mean, listen, it's easy to say on paper, hey, Bob's the better goalie. But, like, there's something weird that goes on with Skinner when he does lock in. He's really good. Then he has a bad game, and you're like, oh, see, he stinks again. And then he has 3 more good games. Like, it's you can't figure it out.
Well, here's the point of comparison I'm going to make. You got to that point right now with Indiana in the NBA Finals. And that is when you get to the gap between games played at the end of the conference finals and the start of the big show, basically. And in the case of Indiana, their equivalent of Stuart Skinner is the fact that they are shooting it. I don't have to tell you, you saw the Eastern Conference Finals.
I saw a little bit. I'm not that big a fan, but I saw enough. I didn't watch.
Well,
I just saw highlights.
Yeah, certainly I saw all of the semifinals, and notwithstanding, and I will go to my grave saying the fact that our 3 superstars were playing on 3 legs collectively, that didn't help us any. But Indiana shooting the lights out at a rate that far exceeds what they did in the regular season. So they've got the hot shooting going. And regrettably, this was something I thought to say to Ben Chu after we stopped taping when we were talking about this. So it's a point that I'm not, although I guess I'm making the point now on air. I'm making it now. And that is Indiana, they are disadvantaged by this layoff. Because if you're shooting hot, it doesn't matter how fatigued you are. You want to have another game in 2 days, 3 days, whatever the case may be. The NBA is always so set in their ways. It will always be the first Thursday night in June. The NHL, not so much. They're a little more flexible, I think, on the scheduling, but still, you have enough of a gap here. Is Stuart Skinner the equivalent of the Indiana shooting where the gap in time between rounds here may disadvantage him, may get him out of that zone that he's been in?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, the weird thing is Cal Pickard's undefeated in the playoffs. So if he comes in, he's undefeated, Rick. Like it just, and then, he had that groin pull, so he came out. And then I guess Skinner realizing he had lost his job and got one more chance is like similar to the team, and he hasn't had a bad game since. So he'll still let in a bad goal every game, but I don't think it really matters. Here's the big thing. To me, the big thing is we've never seen a player, and I mean never, who has the breakaway speed that Connor McDavid has at a moment's notice. So, we've seen fast guys, Pavel Bure, plenty of guys back in the day, Yvonne Cornway. We've seen plenty of burners, but the problem for other teams with McDavid is it only takes him like a step and a little bit to get to full speed. And nobody's ever done that before like that. So what Edmonton's been able to do is when they score a goal on you, like let's say they go up 1-0, well, then they're going with a high-risk chance right after. They're going right with a stretch pass after McDavid right off the next play to try and get it to 2-0 quick. And teams have a hard time adjusting to that. So that's a thing that Florida's going to have to stop that, and it's hard to stop that.
Yeah, and if you look at again, it's hard to say that Edmonton figured out Florida in a series.
No, I don't think
they lost, but I mean, here's the thing, though. I mean, and you'd have to be the ultimate, really sort of Oilers homer to make a big deal out of this. But they won 3 of the last 4 games in the final last year. It's just
That's
they
a year
lost them
ago.
when they counted.
It's a different vibe, and
Okay,
so I don't do anything with. I don't take
okay,
away anything from that.
nothing.
Do I
Okay,
think it helps maybe in McDavid and Draisaitl? Maybe, because maybe
okay,
he figured out how not to get the crap beat out of him by their defense, by Florida's
okay,
defense. So I think there's something for that. There's something
okay.
to be gained there. You know, Florida's going to try and be very physical. They're going to try and get Kane off his game and try and get somebody in the penalty box like Corey Perry, and they're going to do all that. If Edmonton doesn't do that, or Florida makes dumb penalties and Edmonton gets on the power play and their power play gets just a little better because it wasn't great, Florida's going to have problems. Like, they're going to have to play cleaner hockey than they have been, but still be the dirtiest team in the league because there's no other way that they win. So now you're telling Brad Marchand, be a little cleaner. You're telling Matthew Tkachuk, play a little with a little less edge. Like, that's, that could be enough to kind of, equalize things out. And honestly, that there's 2 things. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins used to get dragged because he was the first overall pick, right? He may be the best all-around player in these playoffs. Like, Knobloch literally will use him in any situation. And interesting stat, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Jeff Skinner have played over 900 games and haven't won the Stanley Cup, and they're the leaders, right? There's always those guys on teams that haven't won a cup yet that have played like a boatload of games. And so, there's that factor too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility as well. And this is where, with McDavid, I want to ask you a question that comes to mind here, because you're not just somebody that is a hockey historian, but like myself, I would say more of a sports historian, even sort of beyond that. But like, when you're talking about McDavid and you're talking about, modern athletes, I mean, he's in that uber pantheon here across sports when you're looking at guys like Ohtani, LeBron, Mahomes, etc. So
Gretzky.
he's way at the top there. Yes. Well, Gretzky, if you want to go a little further back, but sure. And it's a thing where, in looking at it, that this happening to be the season of the Four Nations face-off and McDavid having his moment of glory there is there anything to the notion of, I'm not questioning whether it would be poetic or not. I think everybody would kind of agree if he had that breakthrough, on this stage there. But like, if we go back in history, it does seem like athletes, have a tendency to kind of accrue some kind of great momentum as they're heading into what their breakthrough moments are. And it's one of those things where we'll see it in retrospect if the Oilers win the cup. But going in, it's one of those things where you just wonder if that's another story, waiting to be told in his tale, because again, he came up short in the final last year. This is a guy that it's incomprehensible that he goes through his career without any titles. There are guys across different sports where it's incomprehensible that they won't win at least once. He's one of those guys. So for that to be this year, it just sort of feels in my gut kind of, and I'm not saying that this is going to influence my pick or not, but it feels in my gut as though that's how his story is sort of meant to play out, if I'm just looking at it that way.
I think he's playing with that same sort of urgency, like he feels that, like, because I know what the whispers he's heard over the years. And early on, I was like, he's got to make players better around him. He's got to be more of a factor. Well, he is, it took a few years, but he is. I think Leon Draisaitl has actually had that breakthrough that you're talking about now. And like, you can make an argument just from a strictly talent and scoring perspective that right now this McDavid Draisaitl is better than Gretzky Messier.
Sure.
Like, it's just, you could definitely do it. Like, listen, nobody was better than Wayne Gretzky. You get the puck to him in a breakaway situation, it was money, right?
Right.
But he wasn't fast like McDavid is. So goalies nowadays can do a little better to guard that, but they can't when you have McDavid streaking the way he does. And Lemieux used to sort of be the 80s, 90s, 80s version of that.
Yeah.
And, honestly, it's like, yeah, these two are really, really special, but now they have so much secondary scoring, and that's a big deal with this team. And, like Evander Kane's going to be playing on that second line now instead of Zach Hyman, and he has ability and he plays a tough game. So they are playing, Trent Frederick was another big pickup. He's a big kid who plays a heavy game, and those kinds of things have complemented their scorers.
Well, yeah, and I would say too that in looking at this, another cross-sport analogy here, something that my Cavs have unfortunately started to have to deal with in the NBA, cap ramifications and stuff. The team's now dealing with the second apron in the NBA for the last year or two. Hockey's been way ahead of this. For a long time, it has been really, really hard to have too much elite talent on your team. So that has been one of the things. I do not want to let Ken Holland
even the
off the
Leafs,
hook
their
here.
talent's breaking up, right? That core four, we see it's breaking up.
How do you put enough around them? And that's the whole thing here, too, in Edmonton, that when you have two of the top 5 players in the league, which they've had for a minimum of the last 6 or 7 years, minimum, how do you do that? And again, not to let Ken Holland off the hook here, because you do have to try to put the rest of the team around here.
But if you could let him off the hook, Rick, you would. If anybody's gonna, it's going to be you.
No, because I have to say my ingratitude for what happened in the 2010s outweighs my gratitude for this whole thing. Let's just limp into the playoffs. That's why the Wings are at where they're at right now today, is because of his legacy. But don't get me wound up on him as you just did.
Getting salty.
Yeah, exactly. But it's one of those things where, in the last year or two, to your point, they have been able to be a little bit deeper there. When you do have talent and on the blue line, guys who can be complimentary as much like Bouchard and Nurse, they have the horses around some of the main guys to be a little bit deeper. Are they as deep as Florida? Of course not. But the talent that they have at the top,
they're deeper than they were last year. The thing about Florida is Bill Zito has put together a tremendous roster, and Paul Maurice is a great coach, right? We know this.
Yes.
But Zito, he drafted Anton Lundell, and he's turned him into one of the better shutdown kind of centers in the league, who wins faceoffs but still could score. He's drafted that. They haven't been able to hold on to all their draft picks, but I'm starting to see stuff for this year, and it makes me chuckle. Like, hey, this team's looking for the next Alexander Barkov. Well, good luck with that. That's like a once a decade player. Like, there's no Alexander Barkov in this year's draft.
No.
Like most drafts, there isn't.
Right.
He was just always going to be special, and he's impossible to deal with because he can do everything. He can literally do it all. And if he decides that he's going to win a shift and take over, for his 45 seconds on the ice, you better be ready for it. And so you have that. You have Verhaeghe, who basically was handed to the Florida Panthers, and they'd never let go. I don't know if Sam Reinhart is going to be back or not. I don't know what the status is, but that's another guy. I mean, so they're loaded. We know this. But I expect this to be a really good cup, and I think people are going to be surprised. I do.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, you don't care to elaborate on that?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, we're still going through it here, but I mean, in terms of that, again, 2 best players on the ice belong to Edmonton, but then from there, the edge and depth certainly accrues to Florida. So it's a little bit of a trade-off in that sense here. And
Reinhart did return. My brain wasn't working. He's fine.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say
they lost him for a little bit of time, so that was where my brain went at that moment.
I thought that was the case, but there's no way.
I questioned myself when I said it. I was like, wait, I got to check myself here. Yeah.
I wasn't going to contradict on that, but
that's where.
Because I don't feel that I have a firm enough grasp of the knowledge to contradict you on anything hockey. But anybody else, perhaps not you.
Right.
But I would say, as far as again the goaltending, again Bobrovsky. Has again, he's been in the kind of form that he's been in the last couple of postseasons here. So that basically sets him up. And Skinner, who again, a very unsensational, and that would be kind at best, regular season to getting back to the peak form that he was in. And that's the thing too. If it's comparable at all to what I said about the shooting percentage, it's almost maybe a thing of like Skinner having the kind of regular season that he did. And that's the thing. And again, it's not more so than most positions in sports, right? Goalies can lose it, and what they did before can be sort of out the window. So, but if we put that part of it aside, Skinner bouncing back in the playoffs maybe shouldn't be that great of a surprise, because this is more or less who he was last year and prior to that. So I I just kind of wonder in this case, the regular season that he had might have been a little bit of a fluke.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, I don't want to say it was a fluke because he really wasn't good.
Okay.
But this is what happens with goaltending sometimes. We've seen guys go up and down. We've seen guys go hot and cold.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Aiden Hill did not have a good year this year, but he won Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Like, so it happens, man. It's like Mike Vernon. I mean, he doesnin get looked at with great reverence at times.
Right.
He's won 2 Stanley Cups, right? So,
right. Yeah. Well, but in looking at this here, as far as some of the things around the margins that may affect the series here, you mentioned previously about Zach Hyman. Are we ready to say that he is probably not going to be playing at this point here? I mean, I know coaches are going to kayfabe it as much as they can, but just reading the tea leaves here.
No, they're not kayfabing here. They're
okay.
not.
Okay.
I believe he's out. I mean, broken wrist. It's not going to heal in time. There's no way. So no, he's definitely out.
Okay. I mean, and that's
speaking of kayfabing. Quick reminder to people: Queen of the Ring is awesome. It is a great movie.
I need to watch that.
If you haven't seen it, see it. My dad's favorite wrestler when he was younger was Gorgeous George. There's a big Gorgeous George part in there.
Okay.
There's a moment where Vince Sr. is in it. Not obviously now, but a guy playing Vince Sr.
Sure.
Vince now is his young man in this movie.
Okay.
So there's some interesting things. Not Crockett. Sorry. Now I have to think of who it is.
Jim Crockett Sr. should have been in it because he was.
No. Yes, but no. I'm thinking of who is the guy with the tennis racket? I've interviewed him once.
Cornette.
Jim Cornette.
We've both interviewed him. Yes.
Yes. Plays a great part in this.
Okay.
So I mean, this is a really good movie. The girl is from Arrow. I forget her name. She was. She's terrific. I mean, the wrestling in this is really good. One of the other actresses from Daredevil's in it. She's really good. Really liked it.
Hopefully it's on one of the multiple streaming services that I have, and I'll be able to watch it there. But good reminder on that. And a quality piece of work here. But you're saying that the Edmonton coaches are not kayfabing Hyman being out, so that's disappointing.
No, Emily Bett Rickards. I didn't want to go down that road. So, but that's her name, and she's really, really good. She really got ripped for this movie, man.
Well, and I will say, just to do the obligatory thing and gravy train a second here, that who was a big fan of Gorgeous George and who I think announced some of his matches in a National Guard armory back in the day, if I remember the story correctly, is 7-time lounge guest Bob Barker. Bob Barker was a huge Gorgeous George guy. Cool. Talked to him. Yeah, after he hosted The Price is Raw from 2009, if you remember that, he was reminiscing on the show about his background in wrestling and Gorgeous George. But all of that great stuff. And dare I say, one of my famed Morris segues, that this is a series that I would like to think that Bob Barker and Gorgeous George would love to see between these two teams here.
Maybe even John Sterling, but it's not the Islanders. He used to do the Islanders, and I think he did another hockey team too.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with his hockey work, but I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that there was a fair amount of homering involved in that as well. But
if it's John Sterling, there was hockey. There was homering. I mean, it's not.
I remember joking with somebody a couple of years ago about maybe starting up a Twitter account. John Sterling ruins other sports. Like the day of like the Monaco Grand Prix. The closing call would be, and it's nouveau chicanery as Lewis Hamilton wheels in.
No, he just did the Islanders from 75 to 80 on the radio.
Oh, okay. Missing out on the glory years there. Okay.
Yep.
That had to be frustrating to leave the gig at that point.
Yeah, it must have been real hard to be a Yankee guy and watch them win all the time. Come on, Rick.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and this takes us to the whole notion of the rematches here, because of course the Islanders, when they went on that big run, it was the rematch against Edmonton that signaled the turning of the tide of the Edmonton dynasty and of the Islanders dynasty. ending, and that's one of the more famous cases in the last couple of decades in the NHL. You have one of my least favorite games of all time, the 2009 end of the Stanley Cup final. That, of course, I think the most recent one in terms of a rematch between two teams, and on it goes. So, I mean, there is the notion there. I mean, when you look at Pittsburgh in 09, when you look at Edmonton in 84, and perhaps some of the other occasions as you go back in time throughout history, the notion of revenge, the notion of the hungrier team getting it done. How much weight do you put on that, with this being one of the very rare rematches that we get in the Stanley Cup final?
I think both teams are equally hungry. Mm-hmm. I just think that Edmonton, like I said, when they got that second life, they took advantage of it. And I think now the problem for any team is when you have two of the best 6 players in the league now playing in the Stanley Cup, it's hard to put those eyes out. And you saw that last year when it looked like it was over, and it wasn't over. It took a while. And so I think the same struggles will be there this year. I think we should make our picks soon.
All right. Last question that I have before that. I talked about this. I believe this came up on air with Ben Chu, although I'm struggling to remember what was on and off here. But the notion of, because we were talking about the many challenges that the NBA is going to have market-wise with getting eyeballs on the finals this year.
Oh, and I feel bad for them.
Yes. And in terms of the Stanley Cup final, as I noted with him, we're in a different place than we were a year ago as a society. It would be an understatement to say. And as we noted in February here with the Four Nations face-off, like if it had been a thing of like a year ago of like Canada might get a chance to win their first Stanley Cup in 30 plus years, there might have been a lot of people south of the Canadian border that might have been like, oh, good for them. Not so much right now. So I wonder.
And sadly, you may be right about that. And ratings are down. And having a Canadian team playing in American markets doesn't play well.
Usually. But nationalism. Is nationalism going to boost the ratings? I wonder.
So hate watching. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, yes. Like a year ago, it would have seemed harmless to a lot of U.S. fans to see a Canadian team hoist.
Maybe. I mean, I don't think so.
Today, not so much. I mean,
no,
today,
I don't think so.
You don't think so? You don't think nationalism is going to U.S. versus Canada? Okay.
Honestly, I think this one's going to tank a bit in the ratings because of, having a Canadian team in there and not a great big market TV wise for hockey. So I think it's going to hurt on the ratings end. In Canada, it won't. Canada will be unbelievable.
Here's my prediction. And I don't know the exact number from last year. Slightly better than last year, because I agree with Ben. I think the NBA one is going to be like rock bottom. And so I think they're going to benefit.
Maybe that helps.
I got to watch something. I'm not really used to the NBA. So that's
maybe it will. But up to this point, they've been down like 20-something%. So I'd be surprised.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that would make it a little bit tougher. I'm looking at this, and again, I don't
know about last round. This was up to last round. I don't know about the conference final. I haven't seen those yet.
Round by round, I've been looking at this, and again, I try not to go too much with my gut on these things here, and try to look as much as I can at the numbers and trust the numbers. My gut right now is saying that obviously I was wrong to have gone against Edmonton the last 3 rounds. I should be going with them. Could be team of destiny this year with McDavid. This is his year to get it done. But I just look at it, and I think Florida is even tougher than they were a year ago, even if they didn't look like it in the regular season. I just think their roster construction, I can't pick against a team that's not only the defending champions, but looks to be, at least on paper, potentially better than they were a year ago. I'm going to say Florida in 6. I think if it goes 7, this time they're in trouble because they got to go back up there. And we're doing the usual thing of like what might as well be Nome, Alaska to Buenos Aires.
Oh, I know. 2-2-1-1-1. I know.
2-2-1-1-1. You got to love it here. Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't. I'm surprised you didn't have players skating around with IVs in Game 7 last year. But I'm going to say Florida in 6, just because I'm going to go with my gut, or not. I should say against my gut on this one. I'm going to trust the numbers. I'm going to trust what I see there. I don't think you're going that way based on what you've hinted.
Well, Rick, I guess it didn't take that much to figure where I was going to go, but it's good to see that you're going to be completely wrong about Edmonton all the way through. Consistency is hard to find in life, and you're going to find it in the cellar. I am going to take the Edmonton Oilers. I do think it's Connor McDavid's year. I think it's going to be Edmonton in 7, though, because Florida is no cakewalk, and I do think the Game 7 in Edmonton would mean a lot now. They have a nice home ice advantage going for them.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that. Edmonton getting a Game 7 on.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine how loud that'll be? It'll blow out the speakers on your TV.
Yes. It's going to be absolutely insane if it comes to that. And that is a spectacle that.
But not insane like a Detroit
Red Wings?
No, basketball. Pistons. Not like a Detroit Pistons Game 7 in Detroit where it can get nutty.
Malice at the Palace? Okay.
Yeah, at the Palace. It won't be like that.
Okay.
It'll be basically like just crazy fans yelling, but nothing more.
Okay.
Now, the Detroit
I would agree
Pistons,
with
that's a different kind of nutty.
Yeah. I would agree that noise-wise, we could be on the verge of some records here, and they may be running comparisons to jet airplanes and all the, nutty things that they like to do with different types of comparisons here. But yeah, it's going to be absolutely incredible to watch. It will be a really fun series. I was looking forward. I thought that it would have been great to see a team like Dallas in the final. I really thought that it would have been exciting to see that roster on this stage. And I was surprised that did not come to pass. Was not surprised by what I saw in the Eastern Conference final, in as much as this is one of the reasons I'm critical of divisional playoffs. You look at it, and I just don't think the Metro was on the same scale as what.
No, Metro tanked this year. Surprisingly, they tanked. I mean, there's no question. Sportsology is going to hopefully be at the Stanley Cup towards the end. Okay. So if it turns out to be a long series, then you'll probably see me out there. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like, we could pick till the cows come home, and we could be completely wrong too as far as how it's going to go, like how many games.
Well, say hi to all the snowbirds for me, Jerry Seinfeld's parents and everybody else when you're down there. So that'll be good. I will look for you on TV here, as we all should. So, but Russ Cohen on with us here for our Stanley Cup final pick here for 2025 and our preview. Thank you so much, Russ Cohen, 11-time author, Sportsology proprietor, and longtime FDH Lounge dignitary. Appreciate it as always. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for FDH Lounge mini episode 1837.